Sirens, Slammers, and Service, a podcast for female first responders by female first responders. My name is Nikki Clucci, and I will be your host. As a former correctional officer in Alberta for almost 2 decades and the founder of Blue Line Fitness Testing, which provides law enforcement fitness testing and first responder wellness workshops, I started this podcast as a way for female first responders to share the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of their daily work. I want to showcase the unique perspectives, skill sets, and personalities that women bring to a first responder career and share their stories. So get ready to laugh your ass off, learn a whole bunch, and be inspired by some pretty badass women. Let's go. Welcome back, guys. Today's episode is gonna be fire. I'm so excited about this guest. I've honestly been trying to have her on basically since we started the podcast. She was one of the first people I reached out to, and our schedules just never lined up, and they finally did. I am so freaking excited to have Rebekah Hunt with me today. Rebekah is a Security Intelligence Officer at the Edmonton Remand Centre. She's been in that role for 7 years and has a total of 15 years in corrections. I had the honor and privilege of working with her at the old Remand Center and then transitioning to the new Remand Center, and just seeing her grow up through the years in corrections. So welcome, girl. How are you?
I'm good. You can't see right now, but you're making me blush a little bit. So thank you for that.
I love it. I love it. Honestly, I just, like I said, we said before I started recording, I'm so happy to have you on. I've missed you like crazy. Haven't had really a chance to see you in person since I left. And so it's been freaking years. And just, yeah, so pumped to have you on finally and be able to chat with you. So fill me in because I like, even though we've worked together and I might have worked overtime shift with you at the old jail, not a ton of time together, working together. And then when we went to the new jail, I was obviously in the manager role and you were doing your SIO thing. And so we would sit in the same meetings, but we never really got to work together or hang out together that often. So I don't actually know your story. How did you kind of come into this career? How did you find corrections?
So I am originally from a little town in Labrador called Happy Valley Goose Bay. So that's where I grew up. And probably when I was about 18 or 20, I'm going to say 18, 19, just decided that I needed to try something new. I kind of did the university thing, but I couldn't decide on what I really, really wanted to do. So a friend of mine was moving out west and said, "Hey, let's go to Edmonton." So I started looking at different universities and colleges and applied to Grant MacEwan for the police studies program. And policing, law enforcement kind of always caught my interest. So yeah, I thought, you know what, let's try it. So it's funny because my friend actually didn't end up coming out with me. She had to stay and ended up moving to Ontario. But I was already set to go to school, had my residence, so I came out here. So I did my 2 years in the policing program. And I think it was after my first year, because it's a 2 year diploma program that I completed. After the first year, they were hiring at the Edmonton Remand Centre. So that was in 2008. And I put my name in the ring and got the job and started at 21 years of age and been here ever since. So it was kind of a way for me to get experience in the law enforcement capacity. Like my goal was always to apply to policing. However, when I got in with the Edmonton Remand Center, corrections was just the right fit for me. I loved the staff I worked with. I loved the environment that I worked with. One of the things that I love about working in a jail was that no 2 days is ever the same. So every day you're always learning something. There's always something different because essentially you're dealing with not only criminal behaviors, but you're dealing with human behaviors as well. So that part of it always interests me. And then like we started at the old remand. We both transitioned to the new one. I'd worked in CCTV a little bit. I'd done a couple day jobs here and there, did some time on the floors. And then, after my second mat leave, I came back and applied for search team. And that's what really kind of set my stone into the SIO role. So probably in 2015 was when I was on the search team. I learned more in that year of being on the search team that I learned all in the years prior to that. It was very interesting what we dealt with. And I'm sure you remember like dealing with the search team when you were there, Nikki. And we didn't just search and look for contraband. Like there were so many different things we did. We did mail interception, we did phone interceptions, like you know, there was so many different things. And at the time, there was a guy who ended up mentoring me, Scott Reimer, who's now EPS, fantastic guy, really good SIO. And I just used to go over and sit with him. And I was like, I remember the first time sitting in his office, I'm like, yep, this is exactly what I want to do. So I just kept pushing myself, pushing myself. And then, you know, Lise Veenstra, who was the supervisor of the search team at the time, kind of put my name forward for the SIO role, like acting. And, you know, the rest was history. And I love it. I've been here 7 years. I love my job. I have a great team, great managers. And the one thing that I love about this job is that I'm always learning something. There's always something new, whether it's new narcotics or new security threat groups, which is what we refer to as gangs, new ways that we assist police in their investigations. It's always new. I'm always challenging myself. So, yeah, that's kind of my story and how I got into my role I'm in now.
I love that. I mean, like from the very first thing you said, Happy Valley Goose Bay. Like I was like,
You
I'm
can't
sorry,
make it up.
did you say
Yeah,
Happy Valley Goose Bay? I was like,
that is
I,
my hometown, girl.
like how do you put like your address? Like 123 George Street, Happy Valley Goose Bay,
Right?
Labrador.
Yep. Yep. I know it's great. And you know, it was a great place to grow up in. It was like typical East Coast, like everybody knew everybody. You know, I still talk to all of my girlfriends from high school. Like, yeah, it was just, it was a great place to grow up. But there just wasn't a whole lot of places to go to school or work. And, you know, I ended up coming out west and got a great career and a great family. And it was meant to be. I truly believe that things are meant to be. So,
Yeah, that's fantastic. And so, like, as a child, like, were you kind of interested in it? Like, were you kind of like, maybe this is something for me? Or was it just kind of as you were older, like being like, okay, I really got to find a job. Like, I've got to kind of figure out what I'm going to do. And like you're saying, like, there's not a ton of opportunities here. So that's when you set your sight on it? Or was it always kind of something that was kind of percolating in the back?
I think it was when I went to university. So, like when I was growing up, I wanted to be, which is so random, an ambassador. I don't know why. I just wanted to be in politics. I look at it now and I'm like, there's no way I would be in politics.
Right.
I just, you know, I was a 17, 18-year-old girl from the East Coast with big dreams. And I remember going to St. Thomas University, which is in Fredericton, New Brunswick. And I had to pick like a criminology or sociology course. So I picked criminology. And I remember going in and just that whole semester, I was just captured. Like the whole essence of human and criminal behavior, that was just it for me. So that's when I kind of flipped the script and focused on something that would be along those lines. And yeah, that's probably when I was like, well, you know, I think the best way to do this is probably policing. And that's what I always wanted to do. And I think policing is a great career. I have a ton of friends that are police officers and they're great cops and they're great people. I just happened to, you know, when I went to ERC, that was it for me. Just the culture and the people I worked with, I was happy. And that's what I wanted, right?
Yeah, I agree with that. I like you're saying, when you were in those criminology courses and it was just the most amazing thing. I had the exact same experience. Like, because going through high
Really?
school, yeah, going through high school, you have to take those classes, like you have to take everything, right? Just to get into university. So you're taking like biology, which was kind of interesting, but like didn't really like light me on fire. I was like, okay, cool. Social, English, yada yada. And then I got to university and I'd always like my path was always criminology. Like I was gonna be a cop. That was my thing. But I didn't realize how truly like absolutely in I would be until I sat in my very first sociology like based criminology class and was like, oh my God, this is everything that I wanted to learn. Like, and my friends would be skipping their classes like at university, like, oh, let's go to Rat, let's go for a beer. I was like, fuck no, I'm not missing this class. Like, I love this stuff. Like,
Yeah.
I can't wait to like soak in even more knowledge. And so, yeah, I totally get that. It was something that I just was like, this is
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah.
And I'm
And then,
still like that to this day. Like I will literally work all day and I get after our phone calls and texts and stuff with my job. and then we'll watch a crime show. And it drives my husband.
Yes.
It's like, really, you worked on this all day and this is what you want to watch? I'm like, I'm sorry, I love it. Like, I can't help it. Like, it just, when something interests you, it interests you, right? So
It's so funny because so this summer, because I listen to podcasts, obviously, and Dateline is one of my favorite ones, right? And so we drove to BC, and I took my girls by myself because my husband couldn't get the time off, and so we're driving. So literally for 10 hours, we listened to Dateline, and by the time we got to BC, my girls were so like 8, 10, and 14, right? They like, the interviewer would say something, and they'd be like, "Oh, mom, how could they do that? Doesn't he know he's gonna get caught? I mean, obviously he's gonna get caught because he did this and this." And I was like, I'm raising detectives in the back seat here.
that's
Like,
awesome. I love that.
yeah, yeah, but yeah, no, and I totally get it. And then again, like you said, like starting at ERC, I had the same mentality. Like the people just absolutely, like it was such a good vibe when I started, and there was amazing people. They were supportive, they were helpful. I mean, there's always one or two that were, a little bit of a pain in the ass, but like that's going to be anywhere you go. But
Yeah.
for the majority of, my shifts and my partners, they were really good people. And I really like same thing.
Yeah.
Really love that culture. Really
Me
love the
too.
job. Yeah.
Yeah, me
Yeah.
too. And I felt like once you kind of were, like when you started, you had to like not prove yourself, but people were trusting you with their lives essentially,
Yep.
right? So you did kind of have to prove yourself in a way.
Yep.
And once you kind of did and you got accepted in, like, I mean, I still talk to people that aren't here
Mm-hmm.
that, in my mind, I trusted them. So
Yep.
that meant something to me. And, like everything was about being honest and having integrity and character. And yeah, and I mean, we had fun. There were shifts
Mm-hmm.
that we had a lot of fun because, it can be a very negative place to work. And we do deal with a lot of irregular events, shall I say, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
trauma, and you have to have that camaraderie. You do.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
won't make it through
Absolutely.
without it. So, I mean, like, yeah, there's some great memories I have, that's for sure.
That's awesome. Yes. And it, like you said, it's totally true. Like you do have to prove yourself. You have to prove that you're not a fucking airhead, especially as a female, right? That you're not going to come in and be an
Yep.
airhead and be clueless and, be distracted by extraneous things that when you should be watching your partner and things like that. So I totally agree with that. But once you're in, you're in. And
Yeah.
it's the exact same as me. I've been gone for 4 years now, and I still talk to people from the jail, and like connect and, yeah, for sure. And it is because you had that level of trust. So now you can't ever unbreak that bond, right? Like, I mean,
No.
that level of trust was there. So okay, so I want to just quickly go back to kind of moving into the SIO role. So came from the search team again. So for those listeners that are out there, not every jail has a search team. So Edmonton Remand Centre, the new one, very, very lucky in that we have a dedicated search team. So these are dedicated officers whose job is every day to search. And like Rebekah said, not necessarily just search units and things like that. And we had a previous episode with Aaron Pipke, who was the drug dog handler, who's part of that team. But obviously, yeah, searching inmates, searching mail, lots of different things that we're searching through. And not every jail has that. So it is a kind of a special team that's part of Edmonton Remand Centre. If you're going to some of the smaller jails in the province, searches are just conducted by unit officers. So we just pull you off the floor and say, okay, you're up, tag, you're it. We used to paper, rock, scissors up on 5AB as to who had to go do the search, right? So then
Yeah.
you
Oh,
paper,
you're
rock, scissors.
new, you're going.
Yeah, totally. That's exactly it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, you're just pulling officers off the range to go do searches. So, but again, a lot of the jails have access to some really sophisticated equipment that can help us search and things like that. So, yeah, great kind of step into it. And then, what was the actual like recruiting process into SIO? So it was, I'm assuming obviously I had to have a little bit of experience. So your time with the search team, and then was there anything else beyond that? I mean, I'm thinking interview, but was there any other stages, anything else where you had to kind of prove your knowledge to get into that position?
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hey guys, wanted to pop on here before we got into this next episode and let you know about a couple new rad ideas that we have for the podcast. So, the first one is we have a survey up, and I would love to know what you guys think about the show. I'd love your feedback. I'd love your ideas for the next season. And I just love to know what you like and what you dislike about the podcast. And I'm going to sweeten the deal with a $50 gift card randomly drawn from everybody that completes the survey. The survey is going to be in the show notes of all of our shows. So no matter what time you start listening to the podcast at, you'll get a chance to win that gift certificate. The second thing that we're bringing in now is the ability for you guys to leave us a voicemail. You guys can actually call into the show, leave us a voicemail, let us know what you think about the show. If you have a funny story you'd like to share from your time as a first responder, I would love those and showcase those on the show as well. So make sure you guys check out that voicemail feature. It's going to be in the show notes, and check out the survey. Make sure you get that chance to win that gift certificate.
Yeah, so I will tell you how it worked for me was that I knew Reimer was heading to Edmonton Police. And like our bosses at the time did too. And I'd acted a couple of times, like when Reimer was at court or conferences or whatever, or on vacation. And I guess I'd done a good job. So I got approached by Brian and Ken, and this is back in 2016, and they had informed me that Reimer was going to EPS and asked if I wanted to act in it and then potentially compete in it. So of course I said yes. And when I tell you that was the busiest year, it was literally the busiest year. It was like, here you go, good luck. But obviously, like Reimer had shown me some things. Like I had taken time out of my day to go and sit with Reimer. And then Reimer probably spent about a month, 3 weeks with me, like showing me the different things that I would have to do. I will say that this job is at least a 6 month learning opportunity. There's just so many different things that we deal with. And you don't really get comfortable in this job until about, I would say, 2 years. And the reason why I say that is the different networking, like who do I contact to corroborate this information? What sources of information can I use for an investigation where it can eventually go into court or for just intelligence purposes? So it's kind of working through that minefield, learning about things like third party rule, which is our bread and butter of the SIOs. So we aren't able to share information that's not ours without consent of that person. So just the little, ins and outs of that. I'll be honest with you, I was never big into reading policy prior to this. Policy is our bread and butter for SIOs. There's a lot of times that we do get called upon the stand to discuss different things that have been brought into an investigation and into disclosure purposes. And when we get called to testify, we have to know our policies. I kind of got not caught with my pants down one time, but it was one of the first or second times I was testifying. And, I just didn't know the answer. And I remember leaving the courtroom that day and I'm like, okay, I'm reading my policies. And it was just something that as an SIO, I should have known, right? So always a learning curve, learning experience. So yeah, when Reimer left, I was in it. And then I probably did it for about 4 or 5 months and then competed for it. So it was essentially an interview, but it was literally one of the hardest interviews I've ever had to do. I discussed criminal code, policies, you name it, we discussed it. Like you really, you have to know your information. You do. So yeah, that's kind of into it, right?
Yeah, I really like that you say that about policy, because that's the thing too. And that's really like when I got my threes position, I had no acting experience. I had nothing. I had 5 years in. Like I was like, they were like, here's your stripes, off you go. And I was like, how the fuck do I do this job? I have no idea. And that's literally, I spent the first set of six without like, besides doing my rounds and making sure that everything else was done, literally reading the policy, because I was like, okay, the only way I'm going to learn how to do this job is there's got to be something that tells me what I'm supposed to be doing. So I read that policy inside and out, and I was like, you know what, if all else fails, if I don't know what the fuck to do, I can go back and say, well, I did what it said in the policy. Maybe
Exactly.
it's not exactly what we should do, but at least I'm not going to get my pants, I'm not going to get caught with my pants down because I didn't do something, right? So
Right.
yeah, I could definitely see, like, with you guys, because everything is held and scrutinized so much more at your level and what you're dealing with, that
Yeah.
if it doesn't like explicitly follow policy, then all that hard work can be thrown out, right? All of it can be thrown out on a technicality. You're going up
Yeah.
against lawyers, you're going up against the justice system, where sometimes, if it's not followed exactly like it's supposed to, well, then that's not admissible, and that could be a key piece, right? So I can totally see how policy and making sure that you're, adhering to that fully is necessary in that rule, for sure.
Yeah, it is. It's you definitely have to know your stuff, but you're not going to learn it overnight, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and I've trained a couple guys under me who have, since my original partner Kevin left, trained a couple guys since then, and I always say that to them, like, you're not going to learn this job in a night. You're not going to learn it in a week. You're probably not going to learn it in a month. So just lean on me as much as you can, and maybe there's stuff that I'm going to learn too, but at the end of the day, the best thing that we can do is just keep up to date on what we need to know. And, if there's new things coming out that we need to be aware of, then, we just have to do our research on that too. So,
Mm-hmm. So tell me then, so you've been in the SIO role for 7 years now. Like, what is it like? What does a typical day look like for you coming in on your shift? And you're working Monday to Friday still, right?
I am. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So what does that look like for you?
So yeah, we come in. I usually here about 7:30 ish. I check my emails, kind of get my notes together for our morning meeting. We usually have a morning meeting with our security manager, director of security, and all of our security supervisors. And then I have information to share on events of the day before, and then a couple days before, things that have come up in the general morning meeting from the operations. And then yeah, I just go on about my day. So I usually go down to A&D, pick up all the paperwork that I need. And then it's kind of different for us because I don't have a day set in stone. There's so many different things that we could be doing, and it goes in ebbs and flows. So, for example, I could spend a whole week doing just gang profiles for 1 week, because we're having a lot of guys that we could identify, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a whole week that I could be doing phone monitoring. There's a whole week where I'm attending conferences or giving presentations. So yeah, it's kind of, I think that's the one thing I love about this job so much, is that it's never the same day. Like, I know a lot of people say that, but it's really true for this role. It's whatever the need is at the time, that's what we're turning our attention to. So yeah, the one thing that stays consistent is that we do attend those morning meetings every morning. And I go to those segregation meetings. I'm sure you remember those, Nikki. Those are
Yes. Oh, the treat of those meetings. Yes.
oh, old seg day. So that's always consistent, but yeah, it really, like, this week alone. So Monday I was off, my kid was sick because it's that time of year.
Yeah.
Or sorry, Monday I was here. I was doing production orders all day. Tuesday I was off, my kid was sick. Um, and then, like, yesterday, I did a presentation for the new stuff. Then we went to a meeting at Alert with police agencies. Today I'm doing a podcast with you. I did a little phone monitoring this morning. Had a little meeting with our SIOs on the intel products we need to do for the rest of the month. So yeah, no, it's just every day is different. So
It's nice too, like you said, that what every day is different, because if it was routine and you're doing the same thing, I think you lose a little bit, not necessarily of the luster of it, but it becomes that routine where
endless.
yeah, and
Yeah.
well, and maybe you're not then paying as much attention as you should be. Like if you're just doing consistent phone monitoring, you kind of start to zone out because you're just listening to these guys drone on and on and
Well,
on
it's
and on and
redundant,
on.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So just to kind of go back. So we're talking about, you just mentioned about a couple meetings in there. And again, I know some of our listeners don't know. So every morning we had a meeting. Well, every morning there is a meeting. And so it's basically the supervisors and the managers, and then the upstairs managers who are like the big bosses. We sit and meet and we just discuss like what happened on the shifts before, or on a Monday morning. The meeting is always long. So we talk about the weekend. And we're just basically discussing, what codes went off, what issues we had on the units, was there anything major that happened? And then from that meeting and from those reports that we do all week, or, in our shifts and over the weekends, that information is then shared with the security team, obviously, and the SIOs.
Yeah.
And from there, they can glean that information and take. So, if we're saying, during this code, we heard this inmate say this to this inmate, that's something we may flag for security and say, hey, like, this inmate's talking like as if this gang is now paired up with this gang, or as if this gang is assisting this gang in this fight or something. So, maybe we need to do a little bit of follow up. And we would also use you guys, if the unit officers would identify to us as the managers, like, what, we are getting way too many of one gang on this range. Like somehow they're managing to manipulate to move to this unit. Like now we've got 7 red alert members, or whatever type of gang on this unit. We need to maybe like start to dissipate that. That's something we would bring to your guys' attention too, just to say like, and keep checking in. And then the seg meetings, so all the inmates that are on segregation, whether it's admin seg or disciplinary seg, we do a review of them weekly to make sure that, are they supposed to be on seg still? Have we made an attempt to move them back into general population? We just do a full review. Healthcare is involved, psychology is involved. All of our placement, caseworker staff, they're all involved. And we discuss each inmate that's on segregation. And so sometimes those meetings can go very, very long, because there's a lot of inmates on segregation at a jail as big as Edmonton Remand.
Yeah, we've had like over 100 some weeks. It's it's crazy, but it's all case by case basis, right? Like it's not, I know from an outside point of view, people view segregation as a punishment, but most of the times we're trying to keep the inmates safe, right? There's a number of different factors at play, right? So but those can be very tenuous sometimes, that's for sure.
Well, and especially because, especially when you've got those inmates where you're trying to get them out, and then they just do something like, they've had like a good 3 weeks, and you're like, I think we can make the case for this guy to go back to GP. And literally like 2 days before the seg review, they go and do something totally stupid. And you're like, well, bud, now you're not going anywhere. You're not going anywhere. Like you almost had it, buddy, but now you're not going anywhere.
Pretty much.
So break a couple of these kind of responsibilities down for me. So let's start. I mean, very, very kind of a typical role for you, phone monitoring. So what exactly are we doing when we're monitoring the phones? What are we listening for? What kind of tip-offs are you getting to like, oh, hey, we should listen to this inmate's phone or something like that?
Yeah, so anytime like phone monitoring, phone calls are like a source of information for us. So kind of our job is to take multiple sources of information and look to see if information is accurate or if we can discredit it. That's essentially what we do in a nutshell. And we do that for 2 reasons: officer safety and inmate safety as well. So when we're looking at doing, like phone monitoring or looking on social media or talking with outside agencies or doing interviews with inmates, that's the information that we're trying to get. We're trying to get information to make sure that our officers have the information so that they can do their job safely, but also that inmates are safe as well. I mean, we are liable for these guys when they're in custody. If we're aware of information like gang incompatibilities or safety concerns from the community, issues from their federal sentences, if they've done time at different penitentiaries in Alberta or over Canada, if we're aware of that, we need to share that information, right? Because you and I have both been there when there's been major incidents and it's not pretty and it's not a one-on-one inmate situation. So those are the things that we're trying to mitigate, right? So with phones, as per policy, we have to justify it for center security. So whether that's narcotics trafficking around the center, into the center, or gang activity within the center, those are pretty much the 2 biggest reasons that we do the phone monitoring. And then information from that goes, through our chain of command. So our security manager, Jason Kirk right now, and then our director of security, Kenneth Johnson. So, our central role as an SIO is to communicate that information through our chain of command, and then they decide who to share that with. So whether it goes to classification or operations, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, that's essentially what we do in a nutshell. I know you were probably still around in 2016 when we had an opiate crisis showing up in ERC, and that totally rocked our building. So, that's a prime example where phone monitoring was very, very essential, because we were not only trying to learn about fentanyl coming up in our centers and how different it was from other narcotics, but we were trying to keep our officers safe. Like, there were cases of people that did overdose, not in ERC, but I know in other centers and institutions, because we just didn't know how to deal with fentanyl. It was a total game changer. And I know at ERC, I don't know the exact numbers, but we did have quite a few opioid related incidents in that year alone. So that's how we tried to really support the staff, was gain as much information as we could. And a lot of that was from police agencies and phone monitoring. So that's just a prime example, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I was there in 2016. It was a gong show. It was an
It was a
it was like Narcan, just Narcan again. Keep Narcanning. Oh my God, we've hit him 4 times. Hit him again. Okay. Oh my God.
Oh man, yeah. It was like almost every day for 1 month. It was crazy, but I mean, we learned, we survived, and changed the game a little bit. But I think every other agency dealt with the same thing. It was a game changer for a lot of people. So yeah, I mean, that's just a prime example, right? Like, if we have a major incident in here, which we have, sometimes they are gang related, sometimes they're not. But especially the gang related ones, like, we're hit the phones, like we need to get that info, right? We need to communicate that with the staff. We also communicate it with, our SIO partners in the feds, because a lot of these guys will end up eventually going to them. I mean, those incompatibilities don't stop when they go there. And then we communicate it to our outside agencies, because if these guys get released, 9 times out of 10, these criminal activities are not going to stop, and neither are the gang incompatibilities. So
so that was going to be kind of one of my next questions, was, so like the stakeholders that you're liaising with essentially are our police agencies, our federal correction, security intelligence officers, the other provincial jail SIOs, casework staff. What about like externally? Like, are you discussing things with like the Crown prosecutor, or is that more like coming from like Ken's level, director level?
So no, the only time I really communicate with the Crowns is if I get subpoenaed. So it's not on information that I provide, it's on information that we assist with, if that makes sense. So when we disclose information, we have a very set process of doing it. 9 times out of 10, police agencies have to get what we call production order warrants. So the SAOs are pretty much in charge of those in every center. So, and then a lot of times we get subpoenaed to testify on, we provided these records, and then our Telmate system, right? So, yeah, it's not more or less what we listen to on the phones. It's more how we assist them in their investigation. Because I can probably speak for most of the SIOs. I know them all very well. When we do our role, we kind of like to keep church and state between, like, we share information, but if we don't get involved in their investigations, and vice versa, right? So yeah, if that kind of makes sense. I do speak with a lot of Crowns, but it's more or less on ongoing police investigations I've helped with, not from stuff within the center.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Okay, and so then the other thing that you touched on that I kind of want to delve into too, and which I'm sure our listeners are super interested in, and we say it all the time, gangs. So the gangs that we have, I will say there are a lot of beautifully innocent Edmontonians out there who have no idea that we have gangs in our province, like literally no clue. And when I tell them that, they're like, what? And I'm like, what do you mean you don't know that? And then I have to just take myself out of it and be like, okay, of course you wouldn't know, but like, how do you not know? There's gangs everywhere. So So talk a little bit about, kind of what your role is in relation to gang activity, tracking, monitoring, that type of thing, because I know that is a big chunk of your work.
100%. So one of the biggest things that we do is we identify security threat group members. So the reason why we say security threat groups as opposed to gangs is that it encompasses a whole, not just a gang member, it can encompass different security threats. So guys that have like white supremacist ideologies, guys that are like freemen of the land ideologies, like all of those are threats to center security. So they kind of switched that a few years ago. But security threat groups is essentially another word for gangs. So yeah, we can't just label a guy a gang member. We actually have to prove it. So we have a very set process on how we do that. And that's a huge part of our job. And then another huge part of our job, obviously, our biggest groups are primarily Indigenous, have been for a really long time. We're very fortunate that most of them do seem to coexist right now. But we need to really keep on top of who's who in the zoo, is how I put it. So, who our high ranking guys are, who's calling the shots. So, if we have any really bad gang related assaults, we need to figure out who's, behind all of that, because some of them can be pretty gnarly, as you've witnessed and I've witnessed, right? We're always trying to mitigate what I call the power base. So, how you mentioned before, how you're getting more and more guys on one unit belonging to one group. We try to balance that power base. So, the reason why we do that is officer safety and inmate safety. And then, yeah, we just track, the common identifiers of them. We track who they're good with, who they're compatible with, how far their reach is, are they just centralized to ERC? Are they just centralized to Alberta? Do they have connections with other groups within Alberta? Do they have connections with other groups in other provinces? So yeah, different things like that. That's a huge part of our job. And it's very interesting because we're always learning about different groups. So there's been a lot of movement in the last few years. I find we're getting a lot more guys from different provinces. So we're having to reach out to other agencies and learn about those groups from other provinces. So it's super, super interesting. And you're always kind of on your toes, like, okay, I need to know what this is about, who this is affiliated to, who are they good with. So yeah, you're always challenging yourself and learning yourself in this role because things always change, right? It's human behavior.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's like I'll ask you off air because I'm sure you can't share with me, but I was like, who's running which gang now? Because I'd love to know.
Yeah, no,
'Cause
I can't share that on air, but
yeah, because I'm
yeah,
like, I'm sure there's probably some of the same are probably still running them. They're just
yeah,
probably playing a little less of a lower role.
yeah.
So
And that does
take
change too, right? So
yes,
leadership,
yeah,
hierarchy, structure changes, they do happen over time. People die, people,
hmm
just kind of
yeah.
walk away from the life. There's a number of different reasons. So
Yeah, well, and one of the things too, I would say too, like if we have any active officers that are listening, like whether they're correctional officers or not, is keep your ears open because it's amazing how much information as a frontline officer, as a living unit officer, you can actually pick up if you
yeah,
just pay attention to what they say, and then to be able to share that information. I mean, I know for sure as a frontline officer I would catch little like snatches of conversation and be like, well, wait a minute. I
yeah,
know that name. Like, what do you mean? And then you'd kind of like try to look like you weren't eavesdropping, but you're definitely eavesdropping as you were trying to hear like so and so said what about so and so, and you're like, that's a big deal. Like
yeah,
that's a big heavy in that gang, and now he's not in good favor. Well, we should probably watch for that because guaranteed this
100%.
this guy's coming back in, and we are not going to put him on this range. Like, and I mean, sometimes they will tell us. Sometimes they'll tell us when they're coming in, like hey, yeah, like I got jumped out or there was this issue or this issue, like, so I'm not good with those guys anymore. But sometimes they come in and they don't say anything. And so you
Yeah,
go off their old, like, oh yeah, they were good with the red alerts, throw them out there. Oh God, no, they're not.
yeah,
Damn. Like,
yeah. Please don't
so
do that. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So
It's
yeah,
funny
so
because like a huge chunk of my job is source interviews. And, it, the one thing I've learned is if you just ask a couple open-ended questions and listen and show
mhm,
them an even ounce of respect, the amount of information that these guys will disclose to you is amazing. It's so
Yes.
funny how much a little bit of respect goes a long way. You know, like I always enter my interviews like I'm having a conversation like we are right now. And
Yeah.
the biggest thing that I've listened or learned, sorry, is to listen. You're not going to talk to a guy that's been in a gang for 10 or 15 years and tell him how it is or act like you know everything, because you don't.
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
literally a girl from Goose Bay, Labrador, that was
Yeah.
never exposed to any kind of gangs. Like
Mm-hmm.
Indigenous gangs were not a thing where I was from until I moved to Alberta.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, just sitting there and being like, hey, man, can you tell me what this is all about? And just sitting back and letting them talk. Like it's amazing. I learned that very, very quickly. And it's probably one of the best skills that I taught myself. Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I would say to that too, do you feel like, because this is something that I noticed as a female manager when I had to get to the bottom of stuff, do you find that they open up more to you as a female than they do to a male?
Yes.
Yeah.
Overall, yes. I do find that there are particular kinds of inmates that won't, and it's
Yeah.
because I'm a female.
Yeah.
So it's kind of hard to differentiate, but I know like with my male partners, there are times where we have to go deal with a particular inmate. It's a long time inmate that, you know, just doesn't respect women. And I'm
Hmm.
like, yeah, there's no point in me doing this interview. Right.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I will find for the most part, yeah, I find the female card works in my favor. I do. It's
Yeah.
either they're trying to oppress me, I'm a
Hmm.
gang member, listen to
Yeah.
me. And I've totally played on that role. And it works. Or it's almost like I don't know if it's because I've become a mother and I'm a little more empathetic, or I'm a little calmer than when I first started. And it's
Hmm.
almost like they can open up to me, like
Yeah.
somebody's giving them that respect. Because you got to think 90% of these guys I deal with are literally products of their environment. They've
Yeah.
grown up in really, really tough, traumatic childhood environments where no wonder they became criminals and no wonder they became gang members. They've
Yes.
always been looking for that respect, that sense of belonging. You know, and these gangs see that and they recruit that. They don't just
Hmm.
want the fast money and the notoriety or protection. They want that sense of belonging because they've never had that. So if
Hmm.
you go in there and just act like, okay, what you have to say to me is important and I respect it,
Hmm.
it means something to them, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah,
Well,
I do find that. But there are some guys where I'm like, yeah, no, there's no way this is gonna go well.
yeah. Yeah. There
You can
was,
take
yeah.
that one, friend.
Yeah, totally. You're like, I'm gonna dibs out on that.
Yeah,
You hit that one. Yeah. Yeah.
this guy
I
ain't gonna talk. Yeah,
yeah, I found the same thing. And I found it just even like you're saying, just they just want somebody to listen to them. Like
100%.
it doesn't even matter about anything like to do with, whether you're female or male. They just want somebody to actually listen to them, to not cut them off,
100%.
to not be, telling them, something that's more important that they feel is more important than their story, right? Like it's
Or
just that they
judging
want to.
them, right?
Yes.
I
Yeah.
mean, that's not our role. The best piece of advice I ever got was from Pete Carlin. You remember Pete? I love that
Yes.
guy.
Oh,
Oh,
yes.
I
Yep.
still love him. Best piece of advice he ever gave me is we're not here to judge them. We're not a judge and we're not God. We're here to do
Mm-hmm.
our job and that's it.
Yep.
And it really worked for me. It really kind of sunk in. I'm like, you know what? You're kind of right. And it just changed the whole way I dealt with guys. And it was a way easier career, let me tell you.
Yeah, I totally agree with that because yeah, you can get super, I mean, you will, like in this role, judgment will come because you
Yeah,
just see shit all the time and you become quite judgmental despite
you do.
trying not to, you do just become a bit judgmental. But
Yeah.
I agree in specifically judging the person, it doesn't get you anywhere. It doesn't, like, I mean, you
No,
don't understand them any better by judging them. You don't, it doesn't help you empathize with them and figure out what you need to do to help them in that situation or to, like you're saying, maintain security or safety for them or for the staff, right? Judging them is
yeah,
not going to get you that, right? So yeah,
no,
I totally agree with that.
yeah.
um so the last kind of thing I wanted to touch on for kind of you is like, what is your role in regards to like information that's coming into the jail from external? So we're getting tips either from the public, we're getting it, maybe family members are calling in, or maybe even a lawyer, or not necessarily like our intel coming in from police or our other SIO partners, but like just kind of like that random information that flows to us. Like, what is your role in that?
So I wouldn't say I have a very big role in that. Like it has happened a couple of times. If it's anything to do with anything outside of the jail, I can't really assist with that, right? So there's a
Mhm.
lot of times where people have given me information and it's to do with like something that's happening in the community. I always refer them to the police or Crime Stoppers because you can totally make
Mhm.
an anonymous tip that way. And that's
Mhm.
a great program that people can do that. We also have three full-time IIU detectives with EPS, so I refer a lot of people to them as well because they're fantastic and we work with them all the time.
Mhm.
But as far as like for things in here, it's kind of a case by case basis. So the way that we are kind of set up, like we have different security supervisors that deal with like different things. So we have like a guy that deals with all the disclosures. We have a guy that deals with like all the maintenance and like hospital visits, med escorts. Like everybody kind of has their own role. So it
Mhm.
would be more of a like case by case basis. Yeah, I don't know. I've had to deal with a couple of like different lawyers and members of the general public. It's really hard because we're bound by FOIP. So there's a lot of
Mhm.
information like we cannot disclose, right?
Yeah.
Um, for example, like if someone calls in and asks, hey, is my brother or whatever there, like we legally cannot disclose that, right? So,
Mhm.
and I get it, like people get frustrated and they don't understand that.
Mhm.
But yeah, no, I would say more my role is like within the intel because we streamline our other security stuff. It's just because we're such a large center, right? Like
Right. Yeah.
we have so many supervisors and we have a fantastic team. Like the guys are great.
Mhm.
So I kind of streamline most of the stuff, focusing more on like the gang stuff and the drugs and the
Mhm.
intel side of it, right? But
Yeah.
yeah, that FOIP Act, like it's pretty strict and there's a lot of information that we just cannot release, right? Like we're bound by it. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
No, totally. Yeah, I can totally understand that.
yeah.
So kind of we're kind of coming to the end and I want to wrap it up, but do you have any, because I'm sure in all the shit that you have listened to on the phone or like intercepted as intel, I can't even imagine listening to their phone calls. Like, oh, the tea that you must hear.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
but
Yeah.
do you have any funny stories, anything that like sticks out in your mind that you just are like, you go home and you went, oh my God, babe, you'll never guess what happened, or you never guess what I heard today?
Yeah. Nothing really off the top of my head. Like a lot of the stuff is like, you listen for hours and hours and it's just really, really boring, stupid shit, to be
Yeah.
honest. And then you get
Yeah.
that like one piece of intel. I think the one that made me laugh is that I put a separation on two guys because they were very problematic and very um like well known to us, right? And they kept trying to
Hmm.
get it off, and I'm like, yeah, no, they're not living on the same unit. So they
Yeah.
had FOIPed their file, which inmates are allowed to do, and found out that I was the one that put the separation on there. So they're
Yeah.
talking about me on the phone. And then the one guy was like, well, I wonder why she put it on there. And then the other guy starts laughing. Well, probably for the fucking good order of the institution. And then starts laughing. So that kind of made me crack off. I'm like, yeah, no, that's not coming off. But yeah, that one made me crack up pretty good. But yeah,
You're like, yes, that's exactly
that's
why I put it on.
yeah, that ain't coming off. But just the fact that he like had a really good sense of humor about it, well, yeah, that made me crack
That's
up pretty good.
that's
So
that's awesome. Yeah,
yeah.
and that's true, right? You're like, that's exactly why, for the good order of the institution. They even know the terminology. Obviously, they've been institutionally charged a few times.
Yeah, the other one that really made me crack up is we do intercept mail, right? Like
Hmm.
for drugs and other stuff. So I have one, I'm looking at it right now. It says, P.S. Miss Hunt, if you're reading this, sup, girl. I'm like, I'm keeping that for me. So
They're
yeah,
like, yes, as a matter of fact, I am reading it. Thank
yeah.
you.
Oh, they know.
Yeah.
I mean, these guys, a lot of them are very overt, and
Yeah.
they recognize what they are, and they don't try and hide it, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but
Well, there's
yeah,
no, like you said, there's no point in trying to hide it because, I mean, if you're trying to hide it, it's going to get found out, right? If you're just out in the open, well, then there it is. It's there. It,
100%.
take it or leave it, right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Yeah, I like that. Those are funny. Um, okay, well, I'm gonna wrap up just with some kind of rapid fire questions. I do it with all my guests. I'm sure you've listened to other episodes, so you know what's coming.
Okay.
So I guess the number one question I always ask everybody is, as we're sitting and we're listening to hours and hours of telephone, recordings, or we're going through paperwork, or we're doing what we need to do, what is our favorite snack or food while we're kind of working or on shift?
Oh, anyone that knows me I love my sweets. Any kind of like chocolate or candy, Sour Patch candy. Oh, that's my jam. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I know that I need to bring you like a tub of sour sodas when I come see you then. Yes.
Oh, yes, yes. How I'm not like 400 pounds is amazing. It's probably because the center is so big, but yeah,
Yeah,
I will eat that whole thing. I love my candy.
that's awesome. Yes. It's true though too. Like, I mean, the amount of walking that you do at that jail is like unbelievable. Like,
It's a
I
big
think,
place.
well, I was gonna say, I think like because when I was ADD, I had pods 2, 3, and 4, and so I would do my rounds every day. And I was doing, I think it was like 400 sets of stairs a night. Like it was crazy. Like
Wow.
like when you actually do rounds on all 4 units on all 3 of those pods, like it's crazy the amount of stairs you
It's a
do. It's
lot.
like, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. What would be a piece of advice that you would give to somebody like looking to come into the career, looking to like even just get into corrections, or if they were moving into that, security intelligence role? What are you saying to those people?
I always say, especially to the new staff, like you'll find your own way of working, ask a lot of questions, and you're going to make mistakes. For me, a mistake is a learning opportunity on how to be better.
Mhm.
I would say the best piece of advice I ever got was from my dad. And that was let your work speak for yourself. Because at the end of the day, if you just work hard and let it speak for yourself, nobody can question that, and treat everybody with respect. That's how you leave a legacy. So, yeah, that's kind of the two rules I abide by. I treat everybody with respect, and I work hard, and I just let my work speak for itself. And it's worked really well for me so far. So,
I love that. Your dad is
amazing.
yeah,
Yeah,
one
amazing guy.
intelligent.
Yeah,
Yeah, that is because that's exactly it. Like, I mean, let your work speak for itself. Like
yeah.
you can, you know, talk yourself up all you want. If your work doesn't reflect that, it doesn't, your words are useless, right? So yeah, I really like that.
Yeah, it's
Um,
best piece of advice I ever got from one of the best men I know. So
Yeah,
yeah.
that's beautiful. That is so beautiful. Okay, and then the last question I have for you is obviously you get to use some pretty cool equipment, some cool things. What is like your most favorite piece of equipment or favorite, like the thing that you think is the coolest that you get to use in your job?
Oh, that's a tough one. That's a really tough one because there's lots.
Hmm.
I mean, I'm not really good at them because like my partners will tell you I'm so not technological savvy. Like I'm like the old school. I'm a really good typer, but I hate technology. But I do love watching them with the video, like our CCTV cameras.
Hmm.
Those have quite a few capabilities, so those are really cool. And I would say a body scanner. I mean, I
Yeah.
know our director of security Ken pushed really hard to get that, and we
Hmm.
got it, and it's been super, super successful. It's been a great tool in mitigating a lot of harm from narcotics trafficking and use. So
Hmm.
it's a pretty cool piece of machinery. Yeah, I
Yeah.
would say
I
those are the two. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think that was like, because being the person that was part of the new jail like opening committee, that was
Right.
one thing that I was like, this is unbelievable. Like when they showed it to us, I was like, what? It does this? This is unreal. Like,
Right. Yeah,
wow.
it's a
Yeah.
pretty cool piece of equipment. But yeah, that and our video system here, it's
Hmm.
like unreal. I just
Yeah.
I suck at using
Yeah.
both. I'm old school. I like to write notes and yeah, the guys make fun of me all the time. But
Yeah.
yeah.
It's it's just your way. It lets you get your work done the way you need to get it done. It's totally fine.
Right? I accept
Yeah.
me. I'm 38 years old. I accept me. So
Yeah, right. Yes, yes. Well, it has been an absolute treat chatting with you today, Rebekah. I love just hearing, about your work. And again, I can hear in your voice how much you still love this job.
I do.
7 years in, and 15
Yeah,
years in, right? Which is awesome because a lot of people by this stage, and I've talked about this in a couple of my other episodes, how in, first responder careers, we usually gotta kind of go in ebbs and flows, right? And so we'll
right.
be riding the high where this is awesome and I love this job and I love my partner, and then we hit a low where we're like, oh fuck this place, I need to quit, I need a new job, it's garbage, right? And then we kind of come back up, and usually around 2 years we hit one of those lows, around 7 years we hit one of those lows, around 13, 14, 15 years we hit one of those lows. So I'm really happy to hear that you don't seem to be in those lows. You seem to be kind of riding the high still of, still loving what you're doing, still really engaged in what you're doing. You're not kind of just doing the routine because that's what you do. You sound like you still really are, looking for new ways to find things out and
Oh,
interact and talk to the people. And
I do. Like the one thing I love about this job is that you never know this job. And that's
mhm,
kind of what Reimer told me before he left. He's like, you will never know this job. And you're either going to love that or it's going to frustrate you. And I just love it because I'm constantly learning and challenging. Like, don't get me wrong, there are days where Cersei comes out and I get really mad and frustrated, but you
mhm,
just gotta do the 1, 2, 3 deep breaths and continue on, right? Like,
yeah,
but yeah, you're right. Overall, I love this role, and I got very, very lucky. I did work hard to get it for sure, but I got very lucky too, and I had a lot of people help me with that opportunity to show that I was able to do this job. I'm
mhm,
also really lucky to work on a really good team. I have great partners, great manager, great director. So it just all adds up, right?
yeah.
Um, whether things change in the future, who knows? But yeah, right now you're right. I'm good where I'm at, and yeah, it's fun. I like it.
That's yeah. I love to hear that because I think that's the thing too, right? In the role that you're playing, you need somebody that's engaged, you need somebody that cares, you need somebody that
Yeah,
wants to make a difference and wants to still do a good job, because otherwise it's wasted. If you're in that position and that's not your jam, like you're killing us. You're
yeah,
absolutely killing us, when
yeah. I
when
agree.
we want somebody that's going to be there, and especially as a frontline staff, somebody who's going to share that information with us, who's going to come to us and say, hey, you guys, listen, this just came down the pipe and we need to talk about it, or we need to know, you guys need to know about it. And so thank you for that, because that's fantastic to have somebody like you in that
Oh,
position. So
well, thank you.
yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'm gonna wrap it up. I'm gonna let you go because I know you are super busy and I don't want to hold you for the rest of the day. But it has been an absolute slice, girl. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge
No
with us and your
worries.
information.
Thank you for
It
having me. It's great to hear from you, and we sure miss you. But yeah, no, it's great to hear from you, and thank you for having me. So I appreciate it.
All right. Well, you go forth and slay the day. Go be intelligent and catch some bad guys for us.
There you go.
Well, that's it for today, folks. Thanks so much for tuning in, listening, giving me your time, your energy, and your attention. I completely appreciate it. Make sure you check out our next episode with another badass female first responder anywhere you get your favorite podcasts. And follow us on Instagram and Facebook at bluelinefitnesstesting.com. I hope you stay safe, keep your head on a swivel, and watch your six.